Well, we do want to continue sharing a conversation that I had with Milwaukee Archbishop Jerome Listecki, who handed in his retirement papers last month when he turned 75. That is a requirement for all governing bishops. The Archbishop addressed many topics, including the role of women in the Catholic Church. Let's talk about the Pope, Pope Francis. Since under his tenure, it seems the Catholic Church has gone a bit more progressive, that it has kind of moved forward. Do you think that will continue even if there is a new Pope?
Oh, sure. You know, one thing about France, you say progressive. You know, I would say that he took and reestablished a vision for the church, which sometimes, especially like sometimes we in the United States forget. You know, when I take a look and even talk to my pastors, you know, my pastors will talk in terms of maintaining their parish. You know, they'll say that. You know, we've got to get somebody to do this. We got to make sure we have so many masses. We got to make sure. And I will ask them. And you, Portia, you know, my three priorities were Catholic identity and evangelization and priority. I'll ask them, what have you been doing with evangelization? You asked me, how do you fill the churches? Well, it's not to fill the church. How do you bring Christ to people? Where do you go to ignite them in terms of basically what I believe is that inner call of God in all of us? How do you ignite that? How do you begin to preach that? How do you to bring them in? Well, I think what Pope Francis did is he helped us to take our vision out of a maintenance mode into a missionary mode, and he himself was a missionary. You know, so he had this sense of sharing the mission of the church and making sure we went out to be able to proclaim Jesus. I believe that missionary spirit and missionary sense is his greatest gift, and I think that'll be a part of whoever comes into his office.
And on that evangelization, as you call it, with Pope Francis, will others be able to see themselves in the Catholic Church, more different communities, Black community, Hispanic community, the LGBTQ community? Will that kind of missionary draw help the future of the Catholic Church?
Well, my sense is in everything that you mentioned, they're already a part of the church. I'm not, you know, it's not necessarily that they haven't been, but sometimes in whatever given culture, sometimes there's a push against inviting rather than understanding of proclaiming. My sense is you proclaim the Spirit and then you allow the Spirit to work. You know, so it'll be taking a look at how we best proclaim the Spirit to people and allow them to be formed and fashioned by that. I follow Christ not because Christ does what I want him to do. I follow Christ because I understand how important it is for me to follow what he says I should do. You know what the number one reason why people were not going to church? Sloth. They're no longer challenged to live basically the faith. Sloth. I don't want to get up on Sunday. I don't want to go. I don't want to be basically a member. But sloth was the number one reason. So if we're going to attack anything, what we attack is sloth, the complacency that comes in. And that goes into what I was talking about is the difference in terms of the cultures. In the other cultures, when I'm talking in terms like say the African culture, some of the Asian cultures, you're taking your commitment and you're living it out. You know, come higher or water, we're going to be there in church. We're going to be there with the community. We're going to do that. Here in our community, oh, you didn't bring me this. You didn't do that. You didn't do this that well. You didn't. So it need to be excited and energized about the commitment of our faith.
Let's talk about the morale of the priests. Okay. What is the Archdiocese, the vocations right now? How are they feeling? With your retirement upcoming, but also just going through this whole past 14 years. I bet it's been kind of a roller coaster for them as well.
Oh, well, it has, but you know, you take a look at God's providential hand in all this. As I told you, our seminary is full. We'll ordain in May 9 young men to the priesthood. Now, two things are very special about that. I don't think there may be maybe three, but there may be two other archdioceses or dioceses in the country that'll have that number, that'll be at that level. That's one. And the second is the real quality of the young men that we are getting into the priesthood. So there's something in the sense that whether it's born out by crisis or born out by a real sense of the deepening of religious commitment, young men who want to profess basically that faith. And if you talk to our people who are experiencing these young men who are being ordained and going into the priesthood, they love them. That's why the seminary dinner that we have here has well over 2,000 people coming to it. We've got to go to the Wisconsin Center, now the Baird Center, to be able to have a place to be able to hold that many. Now, what does that say to you? It says there's something being generated by the Spirit. The Spirit has a way of taking the challenges, presenting it to young men through those priests who act as an example for them, that want to share in professing basically Christ and His church. And that's what's happening here in basically the seminary. When I came, there were 14 men in the seminary. We opened up our doors for 83 this year. So that should tell you immediately that there's something really wonderful that's going on.
Do you ever see a future perhaps where women would be able to be priests or have a greater role?
Well, I think, there's a little misnomer about that. I already think women have a tremendous role in the church. Basically, priesthood is the image of Christ and therefore male, and therefore priesthood as far as ordained individuals will be male. So that's a given teaching. So do I accept that teaching? Yes, I accept that teaching. And it's not for me to accept it, it's the church that pronounces it. However, I want to ask you something, as I would maybe ask all Catholics. The most important thing for a person in their life is to attain holiness, right? I mean, I don't care if you're a priest, I don't care if you're a bishop, or even a pope. The most important thing is holiness. That's the goal that all of us seek, holiness. And if I were to ask you who the holiest person was in the last 100 years, and I had a whole congregation of Catholics, 80% of them without doubt would say Mother Teresa of Calcutta. So if you're looking for roles, the role for all of us is to holiness. And here, it's achieved by a woman, and a woman who makes a difference not only for us as a church, but made a difference for the whole world.
Catholic education, a lot of schools were closing 14 years ago when you came on, a lot of Catholic schools within the city of Milwaukee. And now, as you said, that was one of your priorities. Can you talk more about why Catholic education was something that you took great pride in trying to really save in the Archdiocese at
Sure.
a time that was very, very tenuous?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I'm a product of Catholic education. So when you go back to basically from kindergarten right through my ordination as a priest, all of my training has been basically Catholic schools. So I know the value of Catholic education. Now, I'm not saying that private education or public education doesn't do a good and solid job. I think it does. But what Catholic education does is it helps form. And that formation is really an important aspect. And when I would take a look at various studies out of Notre Dame and other institutions, you would see the impact that Catholic education makes on a community. And I didn't have to be convinced about that. I kind of knew it in an apocryphal sense, my own kind of experience with that. And so therefore, to lose that would be to lose something which would contribute to the whole spirit of the church. Take a look at the history in many of the dioceses and archdioceses in the country. Many communities came in and, you know, they started to build schools even before they started to build church. And they did that because they knew how important basically the formation was for their children